So let's take a look at the finished panels, starting from the back and working our way forward. I have made a couple of little additions here and there that I'll explain as I go forward. In this back panel, I had a memory box die of tiny little birds, and I decided that I needed something in the far background. Now, in hindsight, you know, I could have, if I thought about that before I put the vellum on, I could have even had some look like they were in the further distance by putting some under the vellum and then on top, as you see here. So that's the back panel. And then moving forward, here is the far ocean with the ship. And then this is the panel with the lighthouse that I'm making some additions on. One thing is from some of the scraps from the first page of the paper, I cut out some additional, rocks and some water and waves. And I'm just going to glue them and tuck them in underneath here over at the side, just to add a little bit more interest there. And then I haven't made a final determination, and I think I can add this after it's all done. I may want to add this little seal that I again punched out from scraps from the main image. So coming forward, here is the seashore panel with the children. And then finally the first panel that frames it all in. So that's going to be the tunnel book. Now, one thing, as I've built these panels, some of them are not as sturdy as I would like them to be. And so what I've decided to do, let me move this white paper out of here too, is to take some 110-pound cardstock that I have and use that as a backing kind of around the whole back. So, you know, cutting it out the same size as the panel, 7 7/8 square, and then because my borders on each one are 7/8 of an inch wide, I've held this border back about a 1/16 inch from that when I cut it, and then inked all the edges both inside and out. And then you can see I've got score tape attached to that, because I'm just going to simply attach that to the back of the panel, which will give it a lot more stability in the tunnel. In previous books I've used various weights of chipboard, but I was trying to get away from having to use something that was a little more challenging to cut. Now, in some of the back panels, the further back panels that have more support because their elements come up further, for example, in this far ocean page, now it's a little more sturdy just to begin with, just because it has all of this coming all the way up. But I think I'm going to put that 110-pound cardstock on every single one. So I'm going to do that next, and then I will show you how I did the accordion frame to attach them all together. So now that our panels are done, we're ready to put the tunnel book together. And to do that, we need to have accordion pieces that would go on each side. And each time I sit down to make one of these tunnel books, I think about how that's going to go together and take into consideration the size of my panels and the size of my frames. I usually try to work with frames that are either 5/8 of an inch or 7/8 of an inch so that the accordion pleats can be easy to work with and be a 1/2 an inch or 3/4 of an inch. And in this case, since the panel frames are 7/8 of an inch, I'm going to make my accordion pleats be 3/4 of an inch. And so how to figure out how many you need? Well, usually it works out to be that, in the way I make them, that if you have 5 total panels, you need 4 complete V's. But just to show you how that works out, let's just draw that out. So the first thing that happens is the back is going to go in the inside V, and then each time we come up, now in this case this is going to be this, the boat is on this panel, and then when we come back down, the lighthouse is on this one, and then the beach is on there. And then what happens here is on the front panel actually gets attached to this side of the V. So this is the front. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4 V's, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pleats. So I'm going to make them each 3/4 of an inch. So 3/4 of an inch times 8 equals, I need 6 inches, a 6-inch wide piece to make my 3/4 inch scores, and then it's going to be the height of my panels, which is 7 7/8 inches. So, and then sometimes what I'll do is actually just make that out of some scrap cardstock and put some repositionable tape on there in some spots and just try it out before I go gangbusters with my pattern paper and score tape and get in a place where I might not be able to get out of if I'm not happy. So that's what I did here. This is one of my scraps of cardstock, and I determined that after I looked at that I think I wanted to have pattern paper for the accordion pleats. At first I thought I'd have a solid just colored cardstock, but I had plenty of this paper that has seashells on one side and the red plaid on the other, and so I thought I would use it. And the one thing about this paper is it is directional. There is writing on it. So whenever you're working with directional paper, what I do is I cut both out and I put them in front of me because I know I'm going to need to work in mirror images and I don't want to get confused about what I'm doing. So at least that lessens the opportunities for confusion. And so then starting at the back, remember I said that in the back panel, what happens is the back panel sticks on that back accordion plate. So that's where I start putting my score tape, is on this first inside V here. And again, mirror image for the other side. I happen to have 5/8 inch score tape. If you're using 3/4 inch, what I try to do is leave a little space near the edge and not go right up into the fold line either. So in this case, a 5/8, because I had it worked great. You could use, a couple strips of 1/4 inch and just make sure you hold it back a little bit from the edge and a little bit from the fold. And then once you establish that one that's on the back, the next 3 you skip a fold, skip, and put score tape on. And then when you get to the front, remember on our diagram that the front, what happens is it sticks to the front of the pleat here, and so for that last one it is going on the underside, so that when we have our book here, this is the front panel, it's on the front, and then you can see if I hold it slightly this way, I think that all the other panels will stack and come in here on those sides of the accordion pleats. Once you have the tape on, what I do is I put one aside and I start building from the back to the front and just tuck it into, know where it's going to go, release a little bit of the score tape at a time, try to keep it nicely in that fold, but so that that fold can still collapse in on or fold in nicely. So I try to build it in kind of a, it's sitting on the table in kind of an upright kind of a manner so that everything stays nice and square and all of the accordions can still close nicely. And just take my time and build up completing the left side and then work in from the right side. And that side obviously will be a little bit trickier because one side's already attached, but just try to keep things square, use your table, and it will go together pretty nicely. Now at the end, on the back here, we're going to put, in the next step when we put our covers on, the chipboard back cover will cover this up and there'll be patterned paper on there. So I'm going to attach my panels and then we'll be back to put the cover on. So as I started putting this together, I realized that there might be a couple of extra tips I could give you about how to do this, because I know that sometimes when I'm doing this, or a project with score tape, I get concerned, am I going to get it in the right place and what's going to happen? So here you can see, you might not be able to see, I've removed the tape backing from the last fold here, and I'm about to put the back on. So what I'm going to do is stand this up, as I said before, and remember that I said that there is no score tape right in that crease. We've held it back from that crease. So I can stick it real tight into that crease without worrying about is it going to stick prematurely or anything like that. And then there is tape on the back, on this back section. That's the part that's going to go down. But in front of the panel, there isn't any tape here, so that once I feel going up and down that it's all nicely in there, I can just squeeze in a couple places and then come back and get it all the way down. And then I will come in with my bone folder and burnish that in. And then I can just repeat that process for each one, knowing that I have some room to work because that score tape isn't in that crease. I hope that helps. When you go to put this final panel on, the front panel that's going to go on the top of the accordion, remember to hold it back just a little bit from the crease edge. That will make it line up better with the panels behind it, because they can't come right into that fold there because of their thickness. They're holding back a little bit. So you can see just a little bit of a reveal in this case. So that's a tip for the front panel. So I've started working on the second side here, and I've attached the back panel. I'm sorry the lighting isn't perfect here. There's kind of some shadowing going on. But what I do is I move the panels I'm not working on over to the left, out of the way. And just, again, work on one panel at a time, putting it into the crease there. Remember, after I pull the score tape off, and remembering that there isn't any score tape on this side, so I can hold it up against that side to get it aligned before I press it in place. And I just gently press it in place until I'm sure that everything is aligned the way I like it. Putting this first panel on the last side is always a little bit tricky, at least for me. So one of the tips I have is when you pull this tape backing off of this last side is to put it back on and leave about a half an inch or so down here at the bottom so that you can try it out by lining it up above here and seeing if everything is where you want it and just sticking that one place down excuse me, before you go whole hog and put the whole thing up. Now you can see that there's a little bit of curving going on in this one, and probably some of the panels aren't cut exactly the same or put down exactly correctly. When I get the chipboard backing on here, that will straighten it out some, but you know, it just has a little bit of a curve to it, and I can live with that, and because that's just the way it is. So now we're ready to attach the covers, and the first thing I did was to take a piece of chipboard cut to the size of the panels, 7 7/8 inch square, and attach that to the back. I used both score tape and glue stick to make sure I had good contact, and you can see I think that I've got a red line going all around here. I've inked the edges and come in a little bit with a marker just in case I don't get the paper on perfectly when I go to cover the back cover. So before we put paper on the back cover, we're going to attach the accordion hinges, and I prefer to use corrugated paper to do this, and I just had well, I have a variety of colors, but none of them were exactly right with this paper line, so I took some white corrugated and I colored it to pretty much come close to what the red is in this paper, and I did that by using a combination of Distress Ink Right Persimmon on the ridges using the ink, and then used the barn door marker in the valleys here, and the combination of those two gives a red that I think goes pretty well with the paper line. It doesn't take very long to do that. Now you can see it's not exactly a perfectly even coverage. That kind of thing doesn't bother me, but if it bothers you, you can find you know, a different method to do this. I also, on the inside, I considered covering this with paper, but one of the reasons I like the corrugated is it is so flexible, and I knew if I covered it with pattern paper, it would lose that flexibility, and I did not want that. So I've prepped this by adding a 1/2 inch score tape on either end, and I'm going to work with my gridded surface here to help keep everything square and lined up. So what I'm going to do first is remove one side of the tape backing, and then line this up so that the edge of that tape is on one of my grid lines here, this grid line right here, so I can see where to put the book. And then I'll hold that straight and then come in here and make sure I keep the bottom edge of this straight. Everybody looks pretty straight, and I'll stick it down. And then I'll flip it over, and I'm just going to use my finger to mash down on this. I don't want to use my bone folder here because you could tear the paper. Now we do want to mash this down so that we get a nice flat surface when we attach the paper on the outside. Sometimes I put this corrugation on the outside and feature it a little bit more, but I didn't want it to be so predominant in this book. So I'm hoping that I can coax these ridges to stay fairly flat so that when I put the pattern paper on both the front and the back cover, it's not too bumpy. I may come in there with my bone folder now that I've gotten it down a little bit. And now to attach the front cover, slide this down a little bit. And again, I'm using a line on my mat here to help me line up keep everything in alignment. And then this is going on the outside of the front cover, and the front cover is a gatefold, and this is, I've only covered the inside of this so far, and so I'll line that up with the line on my board. Make sure it's straight all the way up there. It's fairly straight everywhere, and stick it down. And again, I'll follow that same procedure to flatten this, and you can see that we've got half of the cover in place here. So now I'm ready to work on the front cover and the closure for this book. Now, as I mentioned before, it's a gatefold album. It's going to open like this, and I have already put the pattern paper on the left side, but I'm saving the right side until after I get the magnets added. So this is the element I've made for the closer. Can't say that quite right. But it's a chipboard. It has chipboards, reinforced with chipboard, and I just took one of the cut aparts and then some of the leftover scraps to frame it out, and then it will get attached permanently to the left side, and then there will be magnets on the right side so that it will hold the book closed. And what I've done is, in order to get those magnets on, I've drawn a line halfway so I can figure out the placement, and then I always put, before I draw where they're going to go, I put a M or something so that I know, hey, the magnets are going to go on this side. And then these are very strong magnets, so I'm just using two little flat 3/8 inch magnets. You may be able to see that I've carved out a little hole here just by taking my X-Acto knife lightly and peeling back a layer of the chipboard. That allows the magnet to get recessed and be absolutely flush in here. But these are super thin magnets, so that is not necessary to do at all. So I'm going to put this other magnet on here and then cover the back of this with pattern paper, and then I'll be back to show you how to mark for the placement of the magnets on the right side. Just one more quick thing before I put the backing on this page. You can see I've put some score tape around the edges, but I don't want to put any covering up the magnets. It's best if they're just left exposed here, but I will take, and with my mini glue bottle, and just run a circle of glue right around those magnets, and just to make sure that the paper is adhered right around there, so there's no pulling off before I stick it down. So now I have the closure attached, and I used a combination of score tape and wet glue so it would be on there very, very well. And now I'm ready to mark for placements of the magnets on the right side. So the way I do this is the magnets are hidden behind here, and I take a couple of scrap pieces of paper. I just happen to have a couple of tags sitting around, and I'm going to put those over the surface that has the magnet on it. And then my two little magnets, they seek where they want to go. If I put it close, you might even be able to hear the snap as it finds its partner. Let's see here. Yep. And these have a sticker on the back that you can remove, and now there's some stickiness on those magnets. So if I take and I close the book and I make sure that I get the cover, this cover squarely aligned where I want it to be, I'm checking the top and the bottom here to make sure that those two places are aligned. And then I'll just put some pressure on here. Now this book it's not completely flat because of all the pages, so you might have to put something in there. I'm just kind of bracing it with my hands. And now for those magnets are very strong, and the reason for putting the two tags in there is if you can slip your finger underneath one of them, you can pretty much hold the magnets will stay in place if you're lucky when you pull the top one off. So I'm just going to do that and then pull the top tag off and rub these down a little bit so they're sticking there. And so then you can either leave them right like this and cover the paper on. I'm going to draw around them and just recess them in by cutting off a layer of chipboard, and then simply cover it with my last piece of pattern paper, and the book will be done except for any embellishments that I care to do.